stomp the new stuff that is in here. Other than that, I'm going to cruise through these, folks. My goal is 30 minutes and then get to questions. We're committed to, we're going to stay and answer any and all questions you have. This morning we briefed this. The briefing lasted 38 minutes, so I gotta beat that time, get down to 30 minutes. We answered questions for an hour. So we're here for you. We want to make sure you have everything you need to succeed for this program. So with that said, let's get cooking through the slides. This is the agenda. We're going to do a quick introduction, and again, just like last time, kind of put our base level hat on, try to put ourselves in your shoes and say, hey, here's how to go about this. Here's how to keep this simple and get this done at your installation. Here's the timeline and deliverables. So we know that all of you were teed up and hoping, just like every year, to have your November facilities board and put your FY15 program together, and we know we've held you up. We know we've delayed you back in October, November time frame. Corporately, there was a lot of changes that were desired by leadership. We've really tried to put this together, and we know we're behind. Hopefully, what you'll see today is that we've hopefully kept this a little bit reasonable and given you what you need to get this done. If you have not been to the CE portal, there's a program groups drop down and an integration program group page. If you haven't been there, go check it out. That's where the business rules are. These slides will be posted. There's a link here within them, and this kind of lists the table of contents. On the right there, you'll see your deliverables. 15 May is the magic date. One change from the previous timeline we briefed. We used to have a BCAMP date. We used to have some base level suspenses in here, and at the request of the MAGCOMs, we've removed that. There is no official BCAMP deadline. The MAGCOMs may create deliverables and some actions on top of what you see in our business rules and our timelines. So 15 May is the date where we expect all the deliverables from the MAGCOMs to come to us. The only other date, and we're trying to get, we know one of the biggest concerns in the field, and we're working it, it's a concern to us, we need to get some FY14 money out to start designing projects for 15 and 16. So on 1 March, we're going to ask you if you got something you need design for to get in ACES by 1 March, and there's business rules to tell you what we need, and we're going to try to get some money against some designs in March. Get out on that a little bit early. So those are the deliverables and timelines. You heard me brief this at the WARNORD. If you saw it, at the bottom line, we're moving out. And kind of the approach we've taken here is for all these significant changes. We took our best shot, we fielded them, and we're going to put this in your hands and let you run with the promise that we're going to be responsive, because we know of all the myths and all the different things we hear about, it's too fast, it's too hard, we didn't think X and Y through. The one thing that I'm confident in is that if anybody tells me this is too hard for our airmen, I don't believe it. We've tried it, we've seen it already. We're going to put this in the hands of our folks in the field, and we know that our folks will get it because they're getting it, and they're going to come up with, we could sit in our cubicles in our conference rooms here and talk for 2 more years and try to design this in our cubicles. We're going to put it in your hands. Our airmen are going to do things we could have never come up with. They're going to think of ways to make this better that we would have never come up with here, and we're going to be responsive to that. And we already are, and we're going to try to, if we can't incorporate any changes this cycle, best practices, we'll do it next cycle. So I won't dwell on this slide again. I'm not going to dwell on any of the slides because hopefully you saw the WARNORD. This is kind of our problem statement on the idea that we're going to have a 1 to N nipple, right? This is what you've been dealing with for the last few years, what you've had to brief to your wing commanders. And the idea here is this is too complicated. If we're really just trying to put the next dollar against the greatest risk, we shouldn't have 6 ways to measure risk because by definition, we're not getting after the worst thing. We want to really get after worst first. We want a better way to communicate risk, and we don't want to have 6 different sets of business rules for the different programs. We want to work smarter, not harder. So the challenge then becomes, how do you compare a permit to a pipe to a pavement? And the answer to that question is risk. All of these programs are built around risk. That's the focus of the entire concept of centralization, is to get after the Air Force's greatest risk. And without belaboring, again, the words on this slide, we've adopted a universal definition, a universal concept for risk. And it's a function of the probability that something's going to happen and the consequence if that thing does happen. So for an individual project, we're going to have a risk matrix. And I know that all of you have seen, either through emergency management or different kind of risk modeling, that we do this across the military. We're going to have a matrix that compares probability as a function of the condition of an asset and consequence as a function of the mission impact, right? If this thing no longer works, if we have to shut it down, if we can't afford the permit, what's the impact of the mission? And then we're going to very simply add those things up with a third very small factor being cost savings. And we'll talk more about savings and efficiency as we go. And at the end of this process, what we'll have in terms of our AFCAMP for our FY15-16 program, we're going to have two products. We're going to have a matrix, and we're going to have a list. And both of these things will serve as the starting point for an investment decision by our senior leaders through the governance process. And we like the idea of having a matrix and having a list and kind of two ways to look at this. And we suspect that this matrix is here to stay, folks. This will be a consistent approach. General Carter's all in. All of our senior leaders are all in on this risk-based approach. This isn't going anywhere. And what might happen this first time through is we'll see some things on the risk matrix that a list just didn't get us. And it will help us make some of those deliberate decisions about where we invest our money. So again, the foot stomper here is we're going to have a matrix, we're going to have a list, and those things are going to be a starting point to inform an investor decision. I won't belabor this. The business rules layout, we've got one page per AMP that tells you exactly, if you're the utilities AMP manager at BaseX, there's going to be, utilities is a couple more pages because it's a little bit trickier. But you're going to have a one or two pages that you can print out, put on your corkboard that tells you exactly what you need to do. If you're the facilities AMP manager at the base, there's going to be a one-page sheet in our business rules you print out to tell you exactly what you need to do, soup to nuts. That causes the document to be a little long because there's redundancy there, but it'll walk you through that. Natural infrastructure, same programming rules, refined a bit, same model, scoring model as you used previously. And again, we'll have a full webinar on that. One more foot stomper before we get into kind of the how-to section is, again, I know we delayed this. I know we held up your facilities boards and you've had to communicate that locally. But we did, with all these changes, we didn't want to roll something out that didn't pass the common sense test. So we've, I'm going to back up a slide. Somebody asked consequence of failure. Consequence of failure is going to be, I talked about probability as a function of condition. Consequence of failure is going to be a combination of MDI, which you're going to own. You're going to have the ability to justify changes to MDI. We're going to open that up. And MAGCOM priority. It'll be a combination of those two things where the mission owners own the y-axis, own the consequence of failure. We tested, back to this slide, sorry I'm jumping a bit here. Before we rolled this out, we tested every element of this at the base level with the MAGCOM cooperation. And we think we built this down, brought this back into a simple step forward for this cycle. And I hope you see that today. And we'll continue to do that. Like I said, we would put this in the field. You guys are going to come up with stuff that we would have never thought of here. Things you were probably already doing that can make this better. And we want to hear that, and we're going to be responsive to that. So with all of that conceptual stuff done, we put our base level hats on. We've got, you might have heard me say in a previous webinar, we've got deputy BCEs here, we've got BCEs here, we've got programmers. At my last base, I was extremely involved in the facilities board as the first centralization thing was going on. I've probably briefed 20 facility boards in my career. And we've got folks with that same experience set here. And so we really, as we went through this, tried to put our hats on, our base level hats on when we built it. And we're going to try to put our base level hats on here for the next 5 minutes or so and say, hey, you got the business rules. We know more about them than anybody in the Air Force at this point because we've been working really hard on them. But if we put our base level hats on with all this knowledge of these business rules, here's how we go after this. And I'll be honest, this is focused on the builder piece, which is the biggest change here. But it really applies to most of your sub-amps. Step one, get smart. If you've already realized these slides look just like the WARNORD and you're tuning me out, check this out. The next two slides are new. You need to print these two slides out and you need to put them on your corkboard. It talks about our online resources in our webinar series, and we're pretty proud here of the AFCEC team, not just P&I, but across AFCEC. Over the last couple months trying to implement these big changes, we've pretty rapidly produced a lot of good information, a lot of good training. On the left-hand side here, you see some overarching business process stuff. Again, if you haven't been to our integration program group homepage at the CE portal, there's a link. That's our home base. Announcements, the business rules, templates, all those kind of things. All the videos are posted there from all of our WARNORDs, from all of our webinars. The funding checkbooks, you can track the status of FY14 to inform your 15 programming. We've got a Millbook site where it's a dialogue. It's not where we push to you. It's where you guys talk to each other. And with this forum, I want to publicly challenge you guys on Millbook. One of the downsides of Millbook is anybody can get in there, and sometimes it's a place to publicly vent frustrations on things, and I get that. We want to hear your challenges because we're committed to fixing them and helping you through them. But I want to challenge all you folks who are running 100 miles an hour with this and knocking it out of the park and coming up with these good ideas that I know you're coming up with. I want you to get on there and I want you to share those with some of the folks who maybe haven't figured it out. When that light bulb comes on, when you have that aha moment, when you figure something out, or I just know you're going to have some young troop from ops engineering say, hey, did you think about doing it this way? And it's going to save you a ton of time and effort. Go put it on Millbook and share that with the engineering community. Playbooks, we've got tons of playbooks that we've been working on for 12 months to put tools in your hand to execute this. On the right-hand side of this slide, if you haven't seen, this is kind of AFCEC Ops' side of the slide here. If you haven't seen the Take 10 for Training series that began as builder focused, and we're going to elaborate on it, it is some good stuff. It's 10-minute videos, right? So you don't have to, this kind of started with the idea that we're going to do week-long training, and we're still going to do all those things. But if you're time constrained, and I know you all are, 10 minutes, you can go watch how to get builder access. And as we release these, we've released these in some webinars. Hopefully all of you attended this training. We're going to do these 10-minute chunks of videos, Take 10 for Training, and then come on live to answer questions. So they've done these first 4 already, these SMS 101, all the way through facility condition assessment. Pretty soon we're going to have a team composition and a builder remote entry database. Got to dial in for those, and you'll get more information on times and dates to those as we flesh out the next slide. This is a work in progress. We're going to try to synchronize and keep a concise portfolio of all of our communication efforts. PA's helping us make sure we get this live in real time to you all and sync up ops and environmental and programming and all those things. So this is a little glimpse of what's to come. We're going to add some more details on this and some of the builder, the next 2 builder phases and some of those other things. Make sure you dial in for these. We're going to hopefully, I think I've got some Pacific folks on the line. I know we were looking at our world's clock. I know it's still pretty early in Korea in some of those places. And as always, PACAF, we'll do these at the end of the day here in San Antonio. If we need to host separate events to target PACAF bases who aren't getting on these, let us know and we'll host, or Europe or whatever. We'll host specific information just for you. But all these are going to come in 10-minute chunks. AFCEC Take 10 for Training with live question and answer sessions after that. So even if you don't miss it, we're going to have these 10-minute videos on the web for y'all. So print those last 2 slides out, put them on your corkboard, get smart. Step 2, after you kind of figure out the business rules, narrow your focus. Again, okay, so we're committed to the risk matrix. We're committed to sustainment management systems. Builder and paver, we're committed to this. It's OSD policy. But that doesn't mean you got to go do your whole base tomorrow, right? For the FY15 program, for your facilities board this time around, narrow your focus. What are those things that you know are high risk, that are your greatest risks, that are likely to fail in really bad condition, and that are really important in your mission, and focus your efforts on this to take this first step. You don't have to eat the whole elephant. So how do you narrow your focus? A lot of folks ask me this. This is not new. This is in the P plan. The greatest change in the transformation of the CE squadrons was the creation of the sub-AMP working groups, and a lot of which reside in ops engineering, right? And the idea is to put engineers with craftsmen, with analysts, to really figure out how to lead this asset management thing. And a lot of it is how to narrow this focus, right? And focus on your worst stuff. So get in your data. We've got a playbook that tells your 3 Echo 6s and your folks in ops engineering how to run reports. Run a report, a 491 shop code. Where did I spend all my HVAC money and time, and how many service calls did I do over the last year? Right? And pull that into your sub-AMP working group and do some root cause analysis and figure out what's going on. Figure out where your worst stuff is. You've got some data. You've got a lot of reports on the shelf. I've got a lot of PACAF folks online. You've got e-common at your fingertips. You guys are going to be way ahead of everybody. But all bases have some form of a utility survey, or maybe you had a SIA, or your MAGCOM's done an assessment. That's a great place to start, folks, to narrow your focus. And if you don't have any data and you don't have a report on the shelf, every CE squadron has wisdom. You have a lot of wisdom in your shops. And again, those sub-AMP working groups are supposed to pull in the craftsmen with the engineers and the programmers to pull this together. So bottom line, narrow your focus, find your worst stuff. And second, find your most important stuff. And I want to take a minute on this slide to foot stomp something. We got to the end of the process last year for FY14, and there were some things where questions started coming up. Why is this important thing below the line? I said, well, yeah, that sounds really important. Why is the MDI only 72? And then they told us what it was. And the MDI should have been in the 90s. My question to them always was, why did you wait to the end of the process to call us? So what we've done now is we've opened up those communication channels in the business rules. And if you have something that's going to impact your we're going to take an overarching look at category codes versus assets and MDI in general. And we're building a playbook to usher that in. But if you've got something that's going to impact your FY15 program, this is not your program, the Air Force program. If you've got an incorrect MDI that is going to do the Air Force injustice because of some real property record or whatever, or because the CAT code thing doesn't make sense, you need to let us know now. Let us know up front. We've provided you a template as an appendix in the business rules to do that. So narrow your focus, right? So step 1, get smart. Step 2, narrow your focus. Find your worst stuff, find your most important stuff, because that's what's going to fall in this high-risk quadrant. Step 3, at the WARNORD webinar, if you haven't seen it, watch it. We did an interview with some base-level folks. We've got a video that we're producing that will kind of help with that. But conduct your assessments. Come up with a strategy to do that handful of assets that you set aside to go after in SMS and for these condition assessments. Come up with a deliberate strategy to go do this. And this is a snapshot. I'm not going to belabor this because you all need to get out and watch those. Take 10 for training builder videos. It's going to have a lot better detail. But this slide we put in here for the WARNORD, and I think it'll just show you that this isn't really complicated. It's really not. You show this breakdown here of building HVAC distribution system air handler, go in and say how old it is, and do an assessment of it. Your folks are going to get it. And you know, we haven't had time to kind of address this yet. One of the cool millbook posts we got. Bases are getting smart on builder, right? And at this point, they're following those SIA guys around going, hey, you missed this, you missed that. Because this isn't, for craftsmen, this isn't going to be hard, folks. For craftsmen and engineers, they're going to get this. So know your asset, inventory assess, know your assets, come up with a deliberate plan for step 3. All right, so step 4, just to clear, ACES PM will be the authoritative data source for the camp, for the IPL. All the data we pull for the prioritized projects is going to be in ACES. Okay, so there's going to be a step here where you're going to have to kind of build a statement of work and tie that into ACES. Right, so that's the next 4 steps is, again, the great thing about SMS though is you see a drop-down menu here. You can run a report and you can quickly identify the kind of things that need to be in your project and the conditions that go with those. Now, I told you we're going to get some best practices and roll those in from the field. We've already got one. And we can roll it in this cycle, and it's going to simplify things for y'all. So initially going in, based on our beta tests, we thought we needed to get down to the component section condition index level. And that's still true to get an accurate project score. But if you see here, you know, maybe your HVAC system, you've got 2 component sections you need to get after. You need to get after your DX unit and your air handling unit. But maybe for your fire protection system, you're going to do the fire and alarm and detection, you're going to do the whole system. So you can just use that SCI score. And so what you're going to do is you're going to use a standard report and builder. You're going to identify what elements of the building you want to get after in your project scope. And by the way, PACAF were the ones who kind of brought us this idea, this best practice on simplifying. And then rather than having to go figure out a million, you know, which exact fire alarm switch you need to put in your project here, just tell me you're going to replace, you know, the whole cooling generation system or the entire roofing system or the entire fire system, and we'll build that in. And to calculate a project score, you can do it without this worksheet, but we've just given you this, again, as a tool in your belt to figure out your project score. We're going to weight it based on the cost of that element. So if you're going to replace one fire alarm detector, like the top line here, and it's only $920, and you know, maybe it's got a RAC code or a fire safety deficiency code on it. It's going to make it a really good score, but it's a very small part of the project, right? Under last year's model, if you had a RAC or an FSDC, no matter how cheap the fix was, $5 million renovation, it's going to come to the top of the list. Well, we're not doing that anymore. We're going to weight it by the cost of the project. Another best practice, feedback from the field, if you do multi-facility work, we'll do the same thing for MDI. We'll weight that by the cost being put against each facility. So we've given you a worksheet to say, okay, here's my builder information. Here's how I generate a project score. It's a cost-weighted average. And then the one more thing you have to calculate before we get it into ACES, and we're going to have this Thursday, if you didn't see it in the schedule, we're going to have a cost savings playbook, webinar, cost savings webinar, where, again, we're going to walk you step by step on how to do the cost savings work. So I told you that it's going to be consequence of failure, which is MDI, and you've got a chance to fix that. It's going to be, well, MDI and MAJCOM priority. It's going to be probability, which is condition, and we talked about that. The last 10 points for every risk-based project are going to be savings to investment ratio. There's two programs you can use to calculate that. One is called BLCC. It's what every energy manager uses today at your base. We were going to stick with that solely until we got feedback that we were going to overwhelm the bases, right? Because, you know, if anybody tells you that we're decreasing the focus on efficiency or energy savings, it's the opposite. We're going to add it as a factor to every single project, and we were afraid we were going to overwhelm the energy managers. So as a backup, we've created this project savings calculator. And it's slick. We've tested it with like AFCEC classes. We've done a ton of work. We're on like the 4th kind of iteration. I think we've really refined it down. We're going to walk you through that, but it's a simple way where your 3 E6s in ops engineering can do this, folks. And so you're going to have to figure out your cost savings to come up with an SIR. And once you've done that, you're going to be able to, using Appendix B in your business rules. Again, it's a handy-dandy cheat sheet because we didn't want you guys to have to invent your own spreadsheet to try to figure this out. So we set this up, this handy thing. Once you know we set this up like a PT chart, right? If I do 47 push-ups, I know I get 92 points. Well, if your condition index is 58, you know you get 84 points. And then it also within there has a function where you can build your own list and run some scenarios and things. And when you do math and we do math, we all get the same answer. Again, tools in your belt that we're trying to provide so you don't have to reinvent the wheel on your own. Step 5, again, ACES will be the authoritative data source for the IPL, for the CAMP. We're going to ask you to do a quick copy and paste. This is really at the request of the MAJCOMs. They want us to, well, and we need it too. We need to be able to see what you saw when you calculated your project score. Just for validation purposes. If we need to go back and do analysis on something, we're going to go back to Builder. But this will be kind of our first point for validation when we look at your project score. So what we're going to ask you to do is that worksheet that I showed you, just copy and paste it in there. It's going to be a little ugly because it's text fields, but again, it's just for us to look at so we can see what you were thinking when you built the scope of work and we're pulling Builder data. We'll go back to Builder and do validation there. So again, it's a few extra steps, folks, to get it from SMS to Builder, or from SMS to ACES. We've got a lot going on behind the scenes here to make that more automated long term, but we've tried to keep it simple with some cheat sheets this year, that extra step. And then the one other thing that we need you to do in ACES is once you figure out your probability and consequence, go ahead and put it in here. This is in the Project Other Cost tab, so one of the weird things is it's going to show up with a dollar sign. It's not going to say 56, it's going to say $56 or $76. We didn't want to architecturally change ACES, as you know, because we're getting ready to transition to TRIRIGA. So we use this field, go in there, probability consequence. This is in our ACES guide, which actually turned out really good with some collaboration from the MAJCOM programmers. And so get that piece in ACES. And then step 6, brief your facilities board. I'm coming up 4 minutes on my timeline here, but I want to dig into this. Can you guys pull it up? This has been the source of a ton of questions. The Installation Commander Prospectus. We're getting a lot of, hey, why are we doing this instead of ACES? Does my wing commander have to sign it? Because nobody wants to do we really have to do this? So here's why we're doing the Installation Commander Prospectus. A couple of reasons. One, we don't want you guys to have to figure out this risk matrix thing, right? To build your own spreadsheet with a risk matrix. Guys, I was in the field when the first centralized scoring model came out. And I know what I did. I know what you all did at the base level when this new scoring model came out, right? We took our smartest captain and we stuck him in an office for 2 weeks with the scoring model. I mean, literally, we were like putting food and water, bread and water under his door saying, don't come out until you figure out the scoring model and get something ready for the facilities board. And he came out with Boolean algebra in the spreadsheet where we could go to the wing commander and run scenarios and say, hey, boss, if you give this your priority, here's the tech score. If you give this your priority, here's the tech score. Here's what we think the right strategy is with this spreadsheet. I don't want all of you to have to go out and stick some poor guy in an office to come up with. So we've provided this to you, and it's going to come in the form, well, you can see this is going to come in the form of a spreadsheet. We're going to give this to you next week, and you'll be able to play with this. It's not, and we talked about the A file, but the downside of that is if you put it in, you can't see commanders, you brief this thing. So with this, you'll be able to go in and pretty quickly say, hey, here's our top 10, boss. and here's where they fall in the risk matrix. And inevitably, when one of your projects falls in the yellow or the green even, and the wing commander says, guys, we got to get after that project. Why is it only green? This doesn't make sense. The model doesn't work. You know, I know that never happens. That you never brief something and say, oh. And we're not naive enough to think that this new model or any kind of model we come up with is going to be the perfect answer. If you've got something that falls in the green or the yellow and your wing commander is hell-bent on and you guys think makes sense, this text box is going to be to justify that and tell your MAGCOM why the model missed it and you deserve their MAGCOM priority points. And to kind of highlight the relationship between MDI and those MAGCOM priority points, if you've got a project that's in the yellow because consequence of failure is 40, because the MDI is 40, the MAGCOM can add a bunch of points to that and move it up into the orange box if you can make that case that, hey guys, this is really important because I'm the commander, I'm on the ground, I know what's going on, better than some stupid model. And this is your chance to make that case. And the question is, hey, are you going to require us to push all these up? Well, you know, somebody asked, can we have a formal policy to push all these up? You know, we are going to help you. We're putting together some communication packages to help you with your wing commanders. But we're not going to have to make you push these up. You're going to want to push these up, right? You're going to want to come up to us and say, hey, here's where our stuff fell. The model missed on this one. Here's our justification. You're going to want to do this. Your wing commander is going to want to communicate this outside of just an ACES report. And so this is a standard way to do that. And again, to put another tool in your belt. Let's go back to the slides. All right, I got 1 minute. I'm going to bust my time limit, but we're almost there. Can we get back to the slides, Brennan? All right, here we go. All right, so bottom line on the camp, where'd we go? Do 6 steps. Get smart, keep it simple, come up with a plan, execute, to the best of your capacity. This first step just to make yourself competitive in the FY15 program. Use our ACES guide to get it right, and use the tools we've given you to communicate with the installation commander. And hopefully that helps kind of keep this simple. Let's talk about the AMP. So obviously the most urgent requirement here is to get some things in for the camp, to prioritize projects to drive funding for next year. I'll tell you, as you guys work your BCAMPs, our focus is the AMP. You know, one of the reasons that we've mandated Builder, the primary reason that we've mandated Builder for use in the camp is not because it's the best way to prioritize projects necessarily. We still think, you know, it helps fix us some of the erroneous things that happen with Q ratings and some of the things we were using. But the beauty of SMS is it's going to help us with an AMP. It's going to help us create asset visibility. So the reason that we put it in the camp is so that all of you are engaged, you're working on it. We know there's going to be hiccups, but you know what? Let's get over them together and get pulling on the same end of the rope to really create asset visibility so that we can understand our long-term budget, so that we can start building budget scenarios around AFCOLs, make AFCOLs relevant in the budget, make the AMP relevant in the budget, do real portfolio management with a foundation of data that gives us true asset visibility. Within your AMP, we've set some targets. So you know, for a decade, we've been talking about, hey, get into ACES, program 7 years, FIDEP +2, program it out, get a plan in there. It's kind of overwhelming. I've been at several bases where, you know, ACES is a hard way to manage that. And this is the result. This is real data from a MAGCOM. Some are better than others. This wasn't good at my last base. We didn't have anything in the out years. It's hard to do. This is the problem we're trying to solve. We need to understand our budget in the out years. As the sharks are circling in DC, right? We need to be able to say, here's what our requirement is here, and here's how it impacts the mission. And SMS is going to make this easier for us. So as we gain completeness of our SMS inventories, we're going to be able to pull all these pieces together to understand the total cost of ownership of your installation across the Air Force budget planning window. And here we're already doing drills with the bases that have the most data. Behind the scenes, we're running long-range budgets, figuring out COLs, how to tie in infrastructure to mission impact. And so what we've done for this year is we've set some targets for y'all. This is the second part of your commander prospectus, and we want you to basically do a self-assessment where, if I'm at a PAC, the targets we've set is use your sub-AMP working groups that were defined in the P plan, and for each sub-AMP working group, knock out your top 20 systems. Knock out your worst 20 HVAC systems, your worst 20 roof systems. If you want to do a fit team and take that approach and get everybody together and go do building by building, that's fine too. This is kind of a stretch goal, guys. And again, it's going to be one of the things we're working on while y'all are working on your BCAMPs and BAMPs. Hopefully May, June, sometime, we're still working out the timeline. We're going to roll out a 3-4 year SMS implementation that lays out how we're going to get from here to 100%. Because it's been OSD mandated. We've got 5 years and the clock started ticking 8 months ago. We're going to lay all that out with equipment and training and tools and all of these things. And for now, phase 0 of that plan is get it in your BCAMP. Phase 1 of that plan is try to get after your worst stuff. Shop by shop, build it into your PM schedules. We've set some targets, and this year it's going to be kind of a self-assessment where you guys can kind of look at, okay, how are we? Where are we? How do we need to get after this? To really get after that total cost of ownership. And I think I said most of this already, but if I was in your shoes, I'd build it into my day-to-day business. All right, this is here to stay, guys. We've got 5 years to meet the OSD compliance. Build it into your day-to-day business, and if you bust 15 May, okay, have a plan. Have a plan to get after it. Have active sub-AMP working groups. Build it into your in-service work plans. Stand with Fit Team if you like that approach. Tie it to your preventative maintenance checklists. Do all those things to try to get to that longer-term goal of having asset visibility, having visibility of what it takes to maintain and operate your installation. And we're going to use that to build a better budget, to really inform any decisions about your work order supply and your project money in the out years. And there's going to be some good stuff that comes out of this, folks. I'm really excited. We've got some brains here working on real AFCOLs that we can say, if you fund us to this level, here's the mission impacts. Here's the financial impacts. All sorts of cool stuff we can do. And we're also building some AFCOLs to try to protect base level engineers as we only fund high mission impact stuff. We're going to have some things that, as funds are constrained, that fall off the table. And how do we build a system that triggers different levels and keeps you from limping assets along that can't get funding centrally? That's a teaser. We can't get into all that right now, but the AFAMP and asset visibility is really the focus here, and do the best you can on these targets we've provided. All right, 35 minutes. I busted my time limit by 5. We flew through those. We're recording this webinar, and we've got the WARNORD webinar recorded. We've got all sorts of AFCEC Take 10 for training. I've given you all those resources. If you need more information, get into that right now. We're going to get into the questions. What do we got?
How is the consequence of failure? You talked about that one, I believe. Focus seems to be applying the scoring model to R&M energy demo sustainment greater than 5, AFCEC controlled funds. Is the intent for our single IFO and the installation prospectus to include sustainment less than 5?
The question is, are we centralizing for sustainment under 5 mil? And the answer to that is no. So again, you'll receive additional guidance through MAGCOM on sustainment under 5 mil.
It says we are not allowed to enter the data into SMS until we have completed the training. All classes are full. We have no one from our base in any class that will
The most common questions we got this morning and here are about builder access and training. And if we can, we'll see if we can work some technical magic here and get the Tyndall guys. I'm told that they are dialed in and that their microphones are fired up and they're ready to kind of dial in and answer these questions. Bill, you out there?
Yes, sir, Lieutenant Colonel Meeker. We can get you in the next class, which is in the 28th, 29th, and 30th. We probably have about 15 more slots open that just came open on us. We're doing a test right now for today, tomorrow, and Thursday. And then we've got another class after that is the 11th, 12th, and 13th. Probably have another 10 to 15, maybe 20 slots open for that one. And then the final one is the 25th, 26th, and 27th. But in reality, a lot of what you need to do you can get from the 10-4 training videos. And if you think that you've got them done and you look quality-wise at doing that, we can hand you over assessor data and get your stuff in there. I mean, we're not talking too many buildings, we think.
Thanks, Bill. And I'll piggyback a little bit, just kind of as an overarching strategy. Is when we went into this, it was the Corps of Engineers training was required to get builder access. We still want everybody to get through that training, but to accommodate this pretty fast timeline here, we're going to work with you. We created Air Force training you can go through. And what I'm asking is to have some leadership at the bases, that when we come up with the folks at the bases who we want to have those, especially the data manager rights, it needs to be the right people. There needs to be some leadership involved, communicating with us here at P9 and Ops, mostly in Ops. And listen, this, guys, if you haven't noticed, the reason we're marching out on this is because the new world is, this isn't some contractor's data, and nobody's going to do this for you. This is your data. So when we get you all in there, be careful, because it's your data, and if you screw it up, you're going to have to fix it later across this 3-4 year timeline. So, Bill, thank you for chiming in. I know you guys are up to your elbows. We've had as you can imagine, they've had a spike in customers over there at Ops, and they're doing the best they can. They're doing awesome work to get you all access. So keep that dialogue going and let those guys know what you need.
All right, next question. When do we expect the AMP template to be revised to run this new scoring model?
So let's talk about the A file in the engine room and the AMP templates. I got to be a little bit careful, guys. Our task order for the engine room is getting ready to end. We're working feverishly on a new task order. It's in the contracting process. And that new task order is going to be a prerequisite for building some of this risk matrix stuff into the AMP and CAMP templates in the A file. We have the engine room, that commander prospectus, they built that for us as at least a stopgap under this current task order to make sure you all can look at a risk matrix, but currently it's not in the A file, and we've got to get the new task order awarded before we can actually start making those changes to the A file template. So I'm going to ask you to bear with us, and I promise that if there are shortfalls with our ability to get that updated, that we're going to have a workaround that works. And we'll be asking for your feedback on that.
Next question, we had a similar question this morning. We had a contractor conduct a SIA and populate builder data. If the base SMEs don't agree with the CSCI, are we expected to go in and change the assessment information in builder as we score the project? From Joint Base Charleston.
So, you cannot edit inspection data from a SIA inspector. You cannot edit their data. That is a deliverable they have to provide. However, as you maintain this data over the years, you'll do new inspections every so often. And if you don't agree with something they did, you can add a new inspection. And I'm going to stop talking now. Bill, you want to chime in on this? Bill Hawkins is not only our builder SME, but he's also the COR for the SIA contract.
We've got you and I have said it so many times together that you said it exactly perfect. So, the FCA assessment is nothing but a snapshot in time. I think everybody's going to understand that I've got to manage a contract and I've got to keep the two separate. But just because you don't agree with the assessment, I mean, I would hope that everybody takes an honest look at what you've got to do the assessment. But if you don't agree with it, then you go in and take another assessment. I mean, things are going to happen in life. We had a cold spell just before Christmas in that time period where everything froze. We had tornadoes run through the Midwest. Things are going to happen that are going to change the situation of what you've got in that data. The data is living. It's a living enterprise-wide database that we're going to be executing. And so assessments are going to happen all the time. And you'll see really what the SIA contractors are doing more for you is getting your inventory into the database. The assessment, take 10 for training video, I mean, look through there. Assessment's not going to take you more than, of a piece of equipment, it's not going to take you more than 30 minutes and maybe 10 to 5 minutes to enter it into Builder. It's not going to take you much time once that inventory is already out.
The next question is, how is the scoring model taking into account FSDs and racks? Builder data shows a system in good condition, but sprinkler system with an FSD1 deficiency.
Can you pull up the spreadsheet, Brennan? So we'll try to get this. We got a spreadsheet up. We'll try to get to this. Let's do another question while he's pulling that up. We'll come back to this one in a minute. We got a good graphic that shows you how we're going to handle that.
Someone asked about the slides, and Captain Maddox answered that. They're out on the CE portal. Same thing for the ACES guide. Next one came from PACAF. It said, regarding slide 24, when will facilities camp guidance and facilities project worksheet be republished based on the changes that Colonel Meeker addressed?
The new one's out there. There may be one more tweak we got to make, but the new one's on the portal. And what we're going to do for, especially we'll push information to MAGCOMs, but what we're trying to do is once a week, is it out there? Well, so what we're going to try to do is not change onesie, twosies, but when we find a best practice that we can implement, we're going to try to do that once a week, maybe bi-weekly, depending on the demand, and then push that out so that y'all know what we changed and why. I think it's out there. Okay, well, if it's not, it'll be out there this week, and we'll send a notification to the MAGCOMs. But it's pretty simple. It basically says that you don't have to use the CSCI. If you're replacing the entire system, use the condition for that system. But we'll get that out.
Next question, minor construction components of a project automatically get a POF score of 100.
Minor construction components of a project. That's so they put a question mark on the end, but that's an accurate statement. So let me talk about minor construction. Brennan, you want to talk about minor construction? I said something wrong this morning, and Captain Howell said, "Let me brief it next time." So he's up, batter up.
So I missed the question because I was digging for that other
So minor construction automatically gets max points? That's the question.
So with minor construction, we've basically broken it down to treating it as if there are two separate types of minor construction. We've got standalone minor construction, or we have minor construction components that accompany an R&M or a large sustainment project. Those minor construction requirements that accompany a larger project will receive an automatic maximum probability of failure points that get weighted into the overall project's probability of failure, and then the project will score out that way. For those standalone minor construction requirements, we're treating those on a case-by-case basis. After study last year, we only received 6 of those requirements, standalone requirements, in the total IPL. So we don't expect too many of those. However, if we do, we understand that there's a place on the CE portal for each base in which they're going to drop a memo, and I believe that's included in the business rules under the measurement and validation section. That memo requires your base civil engineer and your wing commander to both sign off that, or the first 06, that's correct. The first 06 in the requesters chain to sign off on this memo, basically stating that it's mission critical and meets the minimum requirements to satisfy the need.
And if I can jump on there too, that the POF, they will max out that portion, but the consequence of failure piece of the model is still to be determined. So the facility, whatever it is, will require a high MDI and or MAGCOM priority to move it up the list to where it would be a funded requirement.
So let me give you an example. Let's say that your operations group commander comes to the BCE or the operations group comes and says, hey, we're replacing 12 old flight simulators in 2 buildings. We need more HVAC, we need more, he'll come to you and say, what do we need? And you'll say, hey, you need more power, you need to reconfigure the walls, you need more HVAC. And so how the process will work is we need, on that memo, the operations group commander to say, hey, this is mission critical. We had 20-year-old flight sims. We're going to upgrade those things. We've committed 3080 funds in FY15. We're planning 3080 funds in FY15. They'll be delivered on X date. The work needs to be done by then. And then the BCE needs to go in and say, hey, this is the minimum amount of work to meet this mission critical requirement. And so the mission owner gets to tell us, hey, we got to do this. The BCE gets to tell us, hey, we're not gaming this to get the max points. This is the bare minimum to accommodate this thing that the mission order says is absolutely critical. And then you get maximum for probability. So we're going to go back to the question about fire safety codes and RAC codes. The question was, if there's an FSDC1 and builder shows it's in good shape, how do we deconflict? My answer is that if it's got a RAC code or an FSDC code, that specific component section or that specific system should not have a good rating. So to provide some consistency in scoring, this is part of our facility condition assessment toolkit here, and I think we've got this on the FCA playbook. If we don't, we will through the ops guys. So if you scroll down, for example, if it's a RAC 2, builder has a scale of red minus to green plus, a 9-point scale. If it's a RAC 2, you can score it. If it's an electrical panel that's got a safety issue, you can score that panel no greater than RAC 2. If it's one segment of your fire suppression system and it's got an FSDC2, you can score that specific component section no greater than yellow minus. So you're going to reflect those codes within Builder, and again, it'll be tied to the specific assets and systems within there. What's next?
What about paver training? The question was asked if there's paver training.
So let me answer it this way, and I don't want to punt this question. We're going to have tentatively scheduled, well, it is scheduled 21 January. You print that webinar or take 10 for training slide and put that on your corkboard. We're going to have paver training, and specifically actually TNAP AMP training on 21 January. Again, take 10 for training. It's 10-minute videos followed by live Q&A. We're going to have the Air Force TNAP AMP manager Brian Lee there, and we're going to have the Air Force pavement sub-AMP manager George Van Steenberg, who I'm sure if you know anything about pavements, you know George. They're going to be in. I think Doc Rutland's going to be in on it. We're going to have all the smart pavements folks to talk to the TNAP managers and programmers and whoever at the bases on how we're going to do pavements, paver, and all that stuff. So that will be the first set of training on paver and pavements in general, and if we need more from there, we'll absolutely deliver it.
Right. The next question, and there's some dialogue in the chat box, no special scoring matrix for rails and wharfs. We have opportunity for MDI refinement on Navy and Army facilities at joint bases.
Yeah, so the focus on MDI over the last few years has been joint bases, and understandably so. I think even I'm guilty of saying in multiple forums that, hey, we're going to look at not what's important to the base, but what's important to the Air Force. Well, you know, some of you don't have that luxury. You need to look at what's important to OSD. I think we've made actually some good adjustments. But again, I would offer up, if there's something that doesn't pass the common sense test, feed that up and let's have a dialogue about it. I think Mr. Dentino wrote in the chat that we don't expect wholesale changes, but you know, it's got to pass the giggle test too as you work with your joint mission partners. So we'll help you with that we can. To talk specifically about rails and wharfs, I'm going to turn this into a more general question, or to a more kind of general answer. There are some things that, you know, maybe aren't captured in SMS, they don't fit neatly in utilities, like a wharf. I don't know that much about wharfs. I'm an Air Force guy, but I'll say, like, I'm going to tell you an example of a bridge, and then I'll back that into wharfs. If you've got a bridge project, and we've got a couple, where I can't really put it in paver, I can't put it in builder, I know you have a bridge study. I know to meet the AFI, the MAGCOM probably funded it, and you had a contractor go survey your bridge and do an assessment. Send it to me. I bet the Navy has wharf inspections that are the same thing. Send us that. If you've got something that doesn't quite fit SMS, doesn't fit the bill, and you've got a study or survey on the shelf, we're going to work with you to get the right probability of failure and consequence on that. But send us, you know, reach out and start that dialogue. Send us your wharf inspection report. Send us your joint base site. It probably has a whole plan of their own. We're going to use whatever you got to come up with a good probability and consequence. So we don't want to automatically eliminate those things. We want to have that conversation and come up with the right answer.
What costs are we entering for AM FIDEP plus 2, builder or project costs? From TACAP.
Good. Great question. We answered this earlier this morning too. So the person who asked this question knows that there are some cost estimating issues in Builder right now. They're working on updating their cost database. You know, it's RS means based, I believe, but it's several years outdated, and there may even be a glitch there even within that. So for the camp, for the IPL, I'll answer that first. You can use it if you think it's correct, but I know that our folks in the field are really good at cost estimating and building projects. That's a sweet spot for civil engineers. So again, the authoritative cost information will be out of ACES. The AMP, however, for FIDEP plus 2, we're talking about what we think we need in FY21, right? For now, builder's good enough. And that's the position we're taking. And if there's some corrections that we can make internally, good. We're working with the Corps to try to get the, well, they're working on it. We're pushing what we can. to get some of that costing database good. But for the purposes of the AMP, to answer the specific question, for our estimate of what we think we're going to need in FY20 or FY19, for now, Builder's good enough. What do you think of that, PACAF guys? Let me know offline, PACAF guys, if you think we're off our rocker on that. But there's not really a good workaround to that for the out-year budget stuff.
Next question, will EQ also use the project cost screen in ACES PM to record POF and COF?
No. We've got a webinar scheduled for the 30th of January. We're actually trying to speed that up. Bottom line is you will use the fields that you used last year. The elements in the EQ scoring model have not changed, and the place that you populate those data elements in ACES has not changed. So to keep that answer simple, there you go. Did I see one other environmental question?
That was it.
That was it?
And we have one here. Any extra credit for R&M companion with a sustainment less than 5 in a single project? If the R&M component isn't funded, the sustainment component cannot happen. So MAGCOM.
No, I get it. I get it. That's how I've always traditionally understood a companion, or an R&M to go with a Milcon or something like that. Is USAFA? No, I mean, quite honestly, the delay here is because no, that's not in our business rules. I'm going off the cuff here, but I think we would question if it doesn't play well, if it's not high risk in the large sustainment, why would we give it extra credit because you're going to do other work with it? If I'm missing the point on that, we might have to have a conversation about that offline. Again, I'm talking off the cuff now on this. No, that is not included. Now, if you have matching funds, if you have NATO or DLA or AFES or somebody's going to put in funds within our SIR calculations, we're essentially treating those as rebates. And so if you've got a mission partner who's bringing sustainment money to the table as a companion, you'll get a little bit of help towards those 10 extra points in the savings to investment. The best way we could come up with to do that is to treat it as a rebate. And while I'm talking about that, let me talk about Red Horse. One of the things we've tried to do here is a lot of consternation last year because we were looking at Red Horse out of context of the YPL. Before we come up with execution agents, we want to understand our priorities and our plan, and then align the right execution agents. So we're going to build an IPL, and then we're going to apply Red Horse resources to that IPL. So the requirement is up front. We're going to encourage you guys to do this. If you've got a requirement you think is good for Red Horse, and one appendix to our business rules, they did a great job of making it transparent what kind of stuff they want, what their minimum training requirements are. If you've got a project and you get that vetted that, yeah, Red Horse can do this, we're going to give you basically a credit for 20% savings on that. And you'll get a couple of extra points in that SIR model that could potentially bump you into a more competitive place in the YPL. And then we'll give you that 20% credit as basically a rebate on your savings to investment. We'll blend you into the YPL, and then we'll march down, and Red Horse will attack the top things on the YPL that have been vetted, that are good, that meet minimum troop training requirements. So we encourage you to kind of look hard at that. What else?
Let's see what it is. Joint Base Charleston asks if the DCO link has been sent out for the savings webinar later this week. Yep, and so for all these webinars, to make it easier on y'all, we're going to use the same DCO link, so it will be the same every day, and then we'll handle it in a similar format with video or briefing followed by a question and answer to get all your issues addressed.
So the link you're using now is we're going to try to stick to that link. We had as much fun as you guys did this morning trying to figure out the correct link for today. So we're going to keep it consistent and stick with this.
And Vandenberg just followed up, where are all the webinars posted? It seems like there's some here and there. Our goal will be to publish them all to the CE portal, to our integration program group page, so you can go there for a one-stop shop.
That's right. with the exception of potentially the SMS stuff, which will be located in the ops side of that. So that slide that we've got back here that I said print out, put it on your corkboard, that'll get you where you need to go. So if it's SMS training, there's a link there for the ops stuff. And we'll have links. So when in doubt, go to the P&I, the Integration Program Group CE portal page. Because even if we've got videos on the ops side, we're going to have links to that or direct you to that from that portal. That's our home base. But print out that cheat sheet, stick it on your corkboard. It's going to tell you where all the online resources are. And when in doubt, go to the Integration Program Group page and you'll find the direction you need to get what you need. That's it? No other questions? All right, well, we appreciate you all dialing in, and I'll close by saying that listen, we know it's fast. We've tried to keep it reasonable and put some tools in your belt. And our commitment to you is to work our tails off here to get you what you need, to enable you to execute this, whether it's tools or webinars or training or phone calls or updating business rules because you come up with a better way to do it. We're not perfect, and we know this model isn't perfect, but we're pretty passionate about this and getting this right for you. We're not passionate about centralization or anything like that. We're engineers, and we're passionate about getting this right for our bases. We're stewards of this program for you. We've pushed this out fast. We're really pushing the edge here on trying to get some of this stuff done, and we're committed to taking care of y'all. And when you come up with things, you let us know and you talk to us. We'll continue to try to push information, but we want to pull it too. So let us know if there's information you need that you're not getting, and we'll see what we can do. If there's something in here that just doesn't work, help us make it better. So thank you all for dialing in. We appreciate this time with you to get your feedback and questions, and if you have anything you want to take offline, follow up afterwards. Have a great Air Force Day.